Hello and welcome to God Day. I'm Sarah Tun. Today's topic is don't skip Leviticus. Leviticus is the third book. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus. Leviticus is full of laws and it's detailed. And so lots of times the eyes glaze over or it gets skipped because it's too detailed and too difficult to understand because there's no context. No. Don't skip Leviticus. I'm here to help because I've needed help and I still need help. But recently I was asked to read the first 5 chapters. Now I read the Torah portion every Saturday. The Sabbath is Saturday. The Torah portion is the portion that all Jewish people who read the Word read every Saturday, every Sabbath throughout the year. There's a Messianic version that also includes not just the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible, that's one section, and the prophets, that's the second section, but also a piece from the New Testament, that's the third section. And I read that, along with the Messianic Jews and the first part along with the Orthodox Jews. It's not a religion. I don't do it for that reason. I do it because it helps me to see where other people are reading. It helps me to know God's Word better. It teaches me, and in this instance, it helped me to understand Leviticus better. Leviticus, it's full of patterns. So I'm going to go through the first 5 chapters. I won't read everything, but I'm going to go through the first 5 chapters and help you to understand the patterns. And those of you who are brilliant and know all about Leviticus will probably say, I'm missing lots. And no doubt I am, but I'm just learning. So here we go. Now, the Lord called to Moses and spoke to him from the tabernacle of meeting, saying, Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, When any one of you brings an offering to the Lord, you shall bring your offering of the livestock, of the herd, and of the flock. Now, first of all, there are offerings that the Lord asks us to offer. The tabernacle of meeting would refer to the tabernacle that God had Moses build in the desert, and it moved when they moved. Remember the cloud of fire by night and the cloud by day and the cloud of fire by night, so that they could see and they could move whenever God wanted them to move. So he's speaking about offerings which include animals. Burnt offerings are the first offerings. Now, in order to find the patterns, because I've read Leviticus before, I skimmed. I also used the headings. My Bible says, chapter 1, burnt offering. Well, you can say you mustn't add to the word, so you shouldn't add the titles, but on the other hand, there weren't any chapters or verses either. And it would be very hard to follow along and read the scriptures together if there were no chapters and verses. So, because we're perhaps less intelligent, our memories are less good, our understanding less than men from the time of Moses. Could be that reason. And bear in mind, it was Moses that penned Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. He wrote them from the Spirit of God, by the Spirit of God. So first we have offerings. And in the burnt offerings, as I skip over, I see that it repeats the types of burnt offerings. So if the offering is a burnt sacrifice of the herd, let him offer a male without blemish. He shall offer it of his own free will at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. So what he's offering is a perfect male from the herd. And I presume that's a cow. And he will do it of his own free will. So he's doing this because he wants to. And it is at the door of the tabernacle. So what he's offering, why he's offering it, and where he's offering it. Then he shall put his hand on the head of the burnt offering, and it will be accepted on his behalf to make atonement for him. So this person is making an offering to God, a burnt offering, because he wants to be atoned. So this animal dies in his stead. And that is a precursor to Jesus dying in our stead. He shall put his hand on the head. So he's got to look at this creature. And it's got to pain him. Not just financially, but if he's got any kindness or sensitivity, he will see that this animal is going to die. And it's not nice. He shall kill the bull before the Lord and the priests. So, the Lord God will see it. The priests, Aaron's sons, shall see it, and they shall bring the blood and sprinkle the blood all around on the altar that is by the door of the tabernacle of meeting. So it's just by the door, so everybody can see if they want to see. He shall skin the burnt offering and cut it into pieces. Then the priests, the sons of Aaron, shall put, so Aaron is the chief priest, and the sons, shall put fire on the altar and lay the wood in order on the fire, and then the priest and Aaron's son shall lay the parts, the head, the fat, on the fire. He shall wash its entrails and its legs with water, and the priest shall burn all all on the altar as a burnt sacrifice, an offering made by fire, a sweet aroma. So the offering is not food; everything's burnt. It's an aroma. It's a sweet smell. Now, different people will like different scents. And I don't really like musk, perfume that's musk. I'm not sure what musk is made of, different musks, but I don't really like it. But I like floral scents. And I do like when I see in the autumn people have their leaves and this is more common in Canada than it is here, but they rake up all their leaves and they burn them. Or there's an open fire and you burn. I love the smell of burnt wood. I love the smell of cotton being ironed, a cotton shirt, freshly ironed. That smell is lovely to me. So that's the burnt offering. Where it is, why, what it is, the animal, and actually how it's going to be done. It's a bit like a news report. You're told when you learn how to write or how to read the newspaper, who, what, when, why, and how. And that's what's here. Who is offering, what they're offering, why they're offering it, where they're offering it, what they're going to do with it, and how is going to be offered. Now, verse 10, if the offering is of the flocks of the sheep or of the goats as a burnt sacrifice, and it's almost identical, it says on the north side of the altar, so that's a slight difference. The priest of Aaron's sons shall sprinkle the blood. He shall cut it into pieces, and so on. And then from verse 14, if the burnt sacrifice of the offering is of the birds, turtle doves or pigeons, bring it to the altar, kill it, burn it on the altar, and so forth. What to do with its feathers, and so on. But when you, and I don't understand some of the detail, because I suspect that a lot of it is symbolic. So what you do with the entrails and what you do with the wings of the birds and so on. But the point is it's a burnt offering, sacrifice to the Lord, sweet aroma. That's repetitive, that's a pattern. Excuse me, and when you look at the subsequent chapters 2 to 5, you will see the different offerings, and I'll skim through that. But you can see from the very first the repetition. Not because God is boring, he is meticulous, he has scientific laws, but also a pattern, because people can only remember so much and people will follow patterns. So let's look at the second offering, the grain offering, chapter 2. So pattern number 1, it has been divided into chapters according to the different offerings. Pattern number 2, you will hear what's going to be offered, why, where it's going to be offered, how is it going to be offered, and who, what, when, where, why, and how. I might have missed when, but it seems to be in the daytime, although it doesn't, I haven't seen it specified. When anyone offers a grain offering to the Lord, ironically there's the when is on the day of. It shall be a fine flour, and he shall pour oil on it and put frankincense on it, and he shall bring it to Aaron's sons the priests, one of whom shall take it from a handful of fine flour and oil with the frankincense. The priest shall burn it as a memorial on the altar, an offering made by fire, a sweet aroma to the Lord. The rest of the grain offering shall be Aaron's and his sons, and they get food. And it talks about being baked in the oven. It talks about what sort of pan. It talks about how to cook it, how to prepare it. And then from verse 11, no grain offering which you bring to the Lord shall be made with leaven. Okay, and Jesus talks about the leaven, beware the leaven, in the New Testament. And there he's referring to the sinfulness of the Pharisees, for example. And also in verse 11, no honey. I don't know why. But if I tell you I don't know something, I've been a Christian for 40 years, and I've been given the title Doctor and Reverend, and I don't know something, that should give you all permission to both say, I know it, let me help you, but also, if she doesn't know it, I don't have to know everything either. It's okay. We're on a learning curve. If you offer a grain offering of your first fruits to the Lord, you shall offer the grain offering of your first fruits, green heads of grain, roasted on the fire, grain beaten from the full heads. So it's bashing the fresh grain offerings. So there's flour, there's grain, there's various offerings that are grains, from the grains. And another part of the pattern, Aaron and his sons, the priests, are always referenced. The third offering is the peace offering. When his offering is a sacrifice of a peace offering, he offers it of the herd. So the first offering was the burnt offering of the herd. The second offering was the grain offering, which is literally grain. The third is the peace offering, again, of the herd, a bull or a cow, the species of the cow, whether male or female. So whereas the burnt offering was a male, this one could be either male or female, without blemish. That's a consistency. He shall lay his hand on the head. There it is. You're going to look at this animal and see that you're killing it as a sacrifice. He shall offer from the sacrifice of the peace offering an offering made by fire to the Lord. And it talks about the entrails and the kidneys and what happens to the bits and pieces in the body. And from verse 6, his offering as a sacrifice to the Lord is of the flock. So that's a different. So if it's from the herd, and I think if I understand correctly, if you have a cow or a bull, you're wealthier than if you have a sheep or a goat. And you're certainly wealthier than if you have a bird. And so another pattern is what is offered comes at the beginning, and then it may vary slightly, but let's see. This sacrifice is from the flock, whether male or female, that's the same as the herd. It shall offer without blemish, that's the same. If he offers a lamb, then he shall offer it before the Lord. He shall lay his hand on the head. You see, you've got to see what you're killing and the remorse and the sadness at the death. And the blood is shared. Now it talks about from verse 9, cutting the carcass along the backbone. I don't understand what that means. I don't know what the reference is. And it talks about the liver and the kidneys. Then if it's an offering of a goat rather than a sheep, it's marginally different perhaps, but basically it's the same. And then in verse 17, this shall be a perpetual statute throughout your generations. In all your dwellings you shall eat neither fat nor blood. So what you eat and what you don't eat. When it's an offering, it is to the Lord. And it even says of this peace offering in verse 16, all the fat is the Lord's. And then he goes on to say that it's the perpetual offering. Then we get into the sin offering, and this is more related to our sinfulness, our humanity. So let's just pause. Now people are sinning, and how does God differentiate between the sin and the different levels of sin? The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, chapter 4, "Speak to the children of Israel, saying, if a person sins unintentionally against any of the commandments of the Lord in anything which ought not to be done, and does any of them, if the anointed priest sins, bringing guilt on the people, then let him offer to the Lord for his sin." So chapter 4 is going to be all about unintentional sin and the consequence. So there is no getting by without some consequence, but it isn't a penalty in the same sense as if you willfully did something wrong. So it is a bull without blemish as a sin offering if the priest has sinned and bringing guilt on all his people. He shall bring the bull to the door of tabernacle, lay his hand on the bull's head. The anointed priest shall take of the bull some of the bull's blood. The priest shall dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle some 7 times before the Lord in front of the veil of the sanctuary. So they're moving into the tabernacle now and sprinkling blood near the veil that separates God and man, the veil that was split the moment Jesus died on the cross, allowing man access to God. From verse 8, he shall take from it all the fat of the bull as a sin offering, the fat that covers the entrails, and so on, the kidneys, flanks, speaking in detail about what to do with the offering, with the animal. But the bull's hide and its flesh and its heads and its legs, its entrails and offal, the whole bull, he shall carry outside the camp to a clean place where the ashes are poured out, and burn it on wood with fire. Where the ashes are poured out, it shall be burnt. So this is outside the tabernacle. Now, if the whole congregation of Israel sins unintentionally, so if an individual sins, even the priest, the sin offering is explained with regard to the bull. Now, if the whole congregation sins unintentionally, and the sin becomes known, they shall assemble and offer a young bull, and the elders of the congregation shall lay their hands on the head. So all the elders. So that means it isn't just spectator. Those who have led the people and allowed them to sin or brought them into sin have to lay their hands on the head of this bull. Be a bit scary, as well, as bulls are quite ferocious, or can be. The anointed priest shall bring some of the bull's blood to the tabernacle of meeting, and the priest shall dip his finger, and it goes on, it's a similar thing, about the horns and the altar and so on. Now, from verse 22, when a ruler has sinned and done something unintentionally against the commandments of the Lord. So first an individual, then the whole congregation, and the elders are responsible, then a ruler has sinned, and it comes to his knowledge. He shall bring his offering a kid of the goats, male without blemish. Okay, so the ruler brings a goat, and he shall burn all the fat and so on. If any of the common people sins unintentionally, so that would be one person, doing something against the commandments of the Lord in anything which ought not to be done, and is guilty, or a sin which he has committed comes to his knowledge, he shall bring his offering a kid of the goats, female. And the routine is pretty much similar. Now, if he brings a lamb, that is possible as well. Explains what if he brings a lamb. And now we are at chapter 5, the trespass offering. So an offering because somebody knows that they want to offer to the Lord a burnt offering or a grain offering. Then it comes a peace offering, wanting peace with the Lord, a sacrifice. Then the sin offering. So unintentionally, somebody directly sins against the commandments, and there's an outline of the offering as a consequence. This is not on the festival days, because that's a whole other thing with the 7 festivals. But these are week by week, if you have sinned. Do they do that every day? I don't know. Now the trespass offering. And this is the last. If a person sins in hearing the utterance of an oath and is a witness, whether he's seen or known of the matter, if he does not tell it, he bears guilt. So if you are a witness to a car accident and you drive off, that's not right. Or if anyone touches an unclean thing, whether it is the carcass of an unclean beast or the carcass of an unclean livestock, if he touches human uncleanness, whatever it might be, when he realizes it, he is guilty. Okay? So if you touch something unclean, you need to do a trespass offering. If you are a witness and you don't offer it, that is a sin. If you are a trespass, if you swear speaking thoughtlessly, if a person swears speaking thoughtlessly with his lips, or to do evil or to do good, whatever is the man may pronounce by an oath, and he is unaware of it, when he realizes it, he shall be guilty. James says, let your yes be yes and your no be no. Remember? And if a person swears speaking thoughtlessly, and then they realize it, time to offer a trespass offering. When he is guilty in these matters, he shall confess and shall bring his trespass offering to the Lord for his sin. It's very public. If he's not able to bring a lamb, he can bring 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons. So if you're not wealthy, you can bring something of less value. And the blood is sprinkled and so on. Now, these are unintentional, or you blurt something else and then you realize I shouldn't have said that. And so you confess it and you offer repentance. Now here's offering with restitution. Chapter 5, verse 14. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, if a person commits a trespass and sins unintentionally in regard to holy things, he shall offer a ram without blemish from the flocks. And if he makes restitution, if he has done harm, he must make restitution and add 1/5 to it to give it to the priest. So if you do something unintentionally, but it causes someone else grief, you must make restitution. And the priest will make atonement for him. Then we get to chapter 6. So we've had all of the offerings. The burnt offering, the grain offering, the peace offering, the sin offering, and the trespass offering. Okay? And in 1 and 2 you're not aware, and increasingly you become aware. Then there's deliberate. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, if a person sins and commits a trespass against the Lord by lying to his neighbor about what was delivered to him for safekeeping, or about a pledge, or about a robbery, or if he is extorted from his neighbor, or found what was lost and lies concerning it and swears falsely, he shall restore what is stolen and add 1/5. I won't go further into Leviticus, but hopefully this helps you to understand the patterns. So first, the pattern, unintentional sin, unintentional wrongdoing, allows you to be guilty, not guilty until proven guilty. Once you recognize your guilt, you need to do something about it. verses today, it seems like we're guilty before we're proven innocent. Pattern 2, the offerings. You bring something to cleanse, to purify yourself from your guilt. An offering is more than an apology. It costs more. It costs in the life of this animal, and it's bloody and it's messy. I didn't get into all the blood, but it's very messy. Isaiah 43:21 offers a clue. This people I formed for myself, they shall declare my praise, it says. And in an earlier God Day, I went through Isaiah 43 in some detail because it parallels law with the coming of Jesus and in God doing a new thing in Jesus. These offerings, these patterns in the offerings, show us God's compassion and God's wisdom in parenting us. So if it's not a deliberate mistake, yes, we have to make a formal apology, make a formal offering to show our change of heart or our regret. But it is to help us to curb that tendency. So for example, with the trespass offering, person speaks out of turn. It may help them when they have to do this offering. It may help them not to speak out of turn again. Now, why is it written in Isaiah 43, this people I formed for myself, they should declare my praise? Why is that there? It's not because God is an egoist. It's because these offerings offer us freedom. The repetitiveness, the progressive consequences, the patterns in these offerings show us that God is trying to teach us according to our understanding. Looking at Leviticus has value. Every word has value. There will be meanings in things that I don't understand, which I've already mentioned. Skimming it isn't wrong, but skipping over it or dismissing it misses the value of it. There's a time for skimming, perhaps the first time. Each time, get a little bit more detailed. And if you find it repetitive, say, Lord, I'm getting bored. Help me to understand. The Lord bless you and keep you in your studies of Leviticus. Study to show yourself approved. God asks us to study. Bless you. Amen.